Hi, I'm Nicholas from ratings.com. Today we'll be doing a review of the Apple Studio display. We'll be evaluating it on our standardized test bench to see how it performs and if you should buy it. The Apple Studio display is a 5K monitor that Apple released to target the consumer level, as they already have the Pro Display XDR for professional users. It's only available in a 27-inch screen size, but there are different variants depending on how you customize it. You could get it with a tilt-only stand or a stand that's height and tilt adjustable, or you could get it with a VESA adapter instead if you want to mount it on a desk arm or use another stand. Also, it comes with a standard glass, but you could get the nano texture glass for extra, and we'll explain the differences between each later in the video. The unit we purchased and reviewed has the tilt-only stand with the standard glass. The Apple Studio display looks a lot like an iMac computer, but without the housing for all the components at the bottom. It has a typical Apple look with a simplistic and nice looking design. It's very well built as it has a solid aluminum frame throughout that's well put together. The main downside is that the power cable isn't detachable, so if you damage it, you'll need to bring the entire display to get it fixed. Another thing to note is that it doesn't have any physical buttons, and the screen automatically turns on when you connect a device. The stand supports the monitor well, and even if the base of the stand is small, it takes a lot for it to tip over. The screen stays in place when you tilt it, but other than that, the ergonomics on the tilt-only version are very limited, and it's hard to place the screen in an ideal position. The height adjustable stand has better ergonomics, but you still can't swivel it or rotate it into portrait mode. Sadly, neither stand can be removed, so you can't use a mounting arm. If that's what you want to do, get the variant with a VESA adapter instead, which doesn't actually come with the stand. The Apple Studio display has less inputs than other monitors, with 4 USB-C ports only. One of the ports supports Thunderbolt 3 with 96 watts of power delivery, and only this input supports video connections. This means that you can only connect one device at a time, so if you have a MacBook and a Mac Mini, you'll need to unplug them each time you want to switch devices. The other 3 ports are standard USB-C with 15 watts of power delivery, which is enough to charge smaller devices like your phone while you're working. Naturally, you won't have any issues using it with a macOS device, and you actually need to use a macOS device to change the display settings. It works with Windows PCs, but you lose out on a bunch of features like the image processing with the A13 Bionic chip, the sRGB mode, and you can't change the display settings. Now, let's take a look at the test results. We'll start with the contrast. A high contrast ratio is important if you use the monitor in the dark for deep, dark blacks. Unfortunately, it has a low contrast ratio, and it lacks a local dimming feature to improve it. This means that blacks look gray in dark rooms. Now, a high peak brightness is important in a bright room to counteract glare. This monitor gets very bright, which is easily enough to fight glare in bright rooms. One of the picture modes is called Apple Display P3 600 nits, and it gets brighter than 600 nits with real content. This is the SDR peak brightness, and unfortunately, it doesn't support HDR at all. This is disappointing if you're a photo or video editor and your work requires HDR colors. Also important for a bright room is good reflection handling. The Studio display has fantastic reflection handling. Our unit has a standard glass, which has a glossy finish, and combined with the high peak brightness, you won't have any issues using it in a bright room. You can also get the nano textured glass if you want a matte finish, which is meant to reduce the amount of direct reflections, but it also makes text look hazier and less clear. Speaking about text clarity, let's have a look at that now. Thanks to the 5K resolution and incredibly high pixel density, the text clarity is outstanding. Text looks extremely sharp on MacBooks and Windows PCs, and the glossy screen finish makes text look clear. If you get the variant with the nano textured glass, keep in mind that fine text looks hazier on screens with a matte coating, but text is still easy to read. Good viewing angles are important to ensure details at the far sides of the screen don't look washed out. The viewing angles on this monitor are good, so you can easily share your screen with someone else sitting next to you because they'll also see an accurate image. An overall uniform screen brightness and color is important when displaying large web pages or documents to avoid distracting areas that are overly dark or bright. The Studio display has great gray uniformity, and even if the edges of the screen are a bit darker, it's not too noticeable. Full screen images with uniform colors look great. As for the black uniformity, it's just okay as there's backlight bleed in the four corners, but there's not too much blooming around the center cross. It doesn't have a local dimming feature to improve it, so it's not a good choice to use in dark rooms. Color accuracy in the standard sRGB color space is important as it's the standard for computer use. Luckily, the Apple Studio display has exceptional out-of-the-box accuracy. It displays all colors nearly perfectly in the sRGB mode. You can only get the sRGB mode with macOS devices, and it locks most picture settings, including the brightness. The brightness is low at 80 nits, but that's the standard for sRGB anyways. If you want to adjust the picture settings or brightness, you'll need to use another picture mode that has oversaturated colors. If you want to take full advantage of this monitor and display vivid colors in photo editing, then the Apple Studio display is a great choice. It has perfect coverage of the sRGB and DCI-P3 color spaces in SDR, and it has great coverage of the Adobe RGB color space too. However, some colors like red are oversaturated in Adobe RGB. Now that we talked about the picture quality, let's talk about some of the extra features that this monitor is known for. One feature it has that most monitors don't is the built-in webcam and microphone. The webcam also has a center stage feature that keeps you centered if you move around, but you can only use this with macOS. Keep in mind that the camera and mic also work with Windows devices too. The webcam quality is disappointing because colors look washed out and dull, but the microphone is fine. There is an update to fix it, but don't expect a big improvement. Keep an eye on our website for the latest results once we retest it. One thing to remember is that any firmware update has to be done with a macOS device, so if you have a Windows PC, you won't be able to fix the camera issue. It also has speakers built around the frame that sound fantastic. They get fairly loud and dialogue sounds clear. Now let's quickly talk about the gaming performance, even if it's not designed for this use. It's a basic 60Hz monitor that doesn't have any variable refresh rate support. Sadly, it has a slow response time, which not only affects gaming performance, but everyday use too. This means that motion looks blurry, and you can see this even when scrolling through long documents, which can get a bit distracting. Because it only has USB-C inputs, it's hard to connect gaming consoles unless you have an adapter. Still, we don't suggest trying to game with the PS5 or Xbox Series X on it because there are reports that the consoles don't even work with the Studio display, and we don't have an adapter to test it. Lastly, a low input lag is really important for a responsive feel, not only when playing video games, but also during regular desktop use. It has low enough input lag that you won't notice any delay during desktop use, and even if you're playing casual web-based games, it's still good enough. So, this brings us to the main question. Should you buy this monitor? Honestly, that's a hard question to answer because it depends on your use. If you're an Apple user and have a MacBook or the new Mac Studio that's meant to go along with this, it's a great choice to complete your Apple ecosystem. You really need to use a macOS device to take full advantage of it anyways, so don't get this to use with a Windows PC. It performs well for what it is, an extremely color accurate display that's good for content creators, and it has a few extra features like the webcam and microphone, but it's not very versatile otherwise. The lack of HDR support is disappointing, and considering it's a high-end monitor, it would be better with a more ergonomic stand. 5K monitors aren't too common, but there are a few options that you could find for cheaper, like the LG UltraFine 5K. 5K monitors have more pixels compared to 4K displays, so even if the text clarity is already exceptional on 4K monitors, it's even better on 5K screens. However, if you want something cheaper and don't mind getting a 4K resolution, the Dell S2722QC is a good alternative. It has better ergonomics even when compared to Apple's optional height adjusting stand. However, you don't get the built-in webcam or exceptional accuracy like on the Apple Studio. If you want an all-in-one monitor that has a webcam and also includes a smart interface, the Samsung Smart Monitor M8 is a cheaper 4K alternative, but once again, the color accuracy is worse.